My name is Carolyn Burgess. I live on Tunnel Road now, and I lived on Tunnel Road in 1991. And as a single woman, I found the area wonderful and truly enjoyed it. And that day in 1991, I was at the San Francisco International Airport preparing to leave for a 6-day trip. I was a flight attendant. I was going to Bangkok. And trying to get a hold of one of my neighbors prior to my departure. I couldn't get a hold of any of my neighbors because every line was busy, meaning that by then the fire had burned through, which I didn't realize. But I called my father and he confirmed there was a very big fire here. Got off the airplane, I got in my car, I drove across the Bay Bridge, and all this ash was coming down on top of my car as I drove across, and I was thinking, I hope this is not my house. I hope this is not my house. And by the time I got to the side of the bay, 13 was shut down in 24. So I went on the back roads and I got into Montclair, and it was like at one of those wild Italian Fellini movies where everybody is driving all over the place and people are in the middle of the road trying to direct traffic, but also trying not to get hit by these cars that are coming out of the hills filled with some of their items that they love. And so I went up one of the back roads. I finally got my way to Shepherd Canyon and up to Grizzly Peak and to the Colton Firehouse because I couldn't go any farther. The smoke was too thick. And I rang the bell. Well, what was I thinking? You know, there wasn't any firemen there. And I eventually went down to my brother's in Alameda. And I stayed there for a couple of days and then had to move to another friend's house because it was very upsetting for his children to see me crying all the time. And what I learned in the process of learning how to maneuver through the insurance, the permits, the contractors, is to ask a lot of questions. When I moved here in '86, I had no idea about fires in the hills, wildland urban interface, and what that really means, you know, what responsibilities I had as a homeowner. And so through all of this, I made a lot of good friends that really helped me. Because, you know, there I was by myself at a tile store trying to pick out tile, and I would hear these couples fighting over what color. Well, I didn't have to worry about that because it was only me that was making the decisions, but some of the decisions would have been easier with a partner. And so I learned to rely on my insurance agent and other neighbors that I eventually reconnected with. In fact, it was a funny story when we finally did reconnect, which took about a week because in those days we didn't have cell phones, but we ended up at having dinner at Jack London Square. And so there maybe were like 10 of us, 12 of us, and we sat down at this big round table, and the wait person puts the menu down in front of all of us, and the only thing we knew we wanted was wine. We couldn't make a decision, which is typical of people that have gone through a trauma. And so we just had the people at the restaurant order for us, and whatever was put in front of us was perfect. We were just happy to find one another, that everybody was healthy, and we were starting to exchange ideas about what the next step was. And so ultimately I got involved with North Hills Community Association. I learned a lot about taking care of my property and what that really means, not only for my own personal safety, but for the safety of my neighbors. And I remember when I was standing in line to get up to my property after the fire, and because we had to be escorted up with a policeman, and I remember these contractors coming down the line, handing out cards to everybody. And I looked at, these cards, and they were from Arizona, they were from Nevada, they had come from all over the country because we had so much need, but also they were not always the most careful about building. And a lot of people had problems because of that, including me a little bit. But my house, it took me 2 years to finally get into the rebuild. I had 8 different insurance adjusters, and they were from Texas and Florida and the East Coast. And so their perception of what the values were out here of replacement items was very different. So I finally had to hire somebody. Once again, I needed somebody to help me, and I learned to not be afraid to ask for help. So I encourage everybody to ask questions and to live your best life, and keep those grasses down and the trees limbed up. Thank you.